So Tim, within the study, you mentioned an interesting number that was that 97% of people are actually not ready to buy. I think that's a quite shocking number, and it's very good to put it on the table because, as we mentioned before, the old expectations in terms of scaling and pushing people are so deep within the mindsets, while with that fact on the table, it's actually the question, I mean, I'm actually already too late. What do I need to do to become in front, which is the opposite of what I did before?
If an organization contacts somebody, you'll get 4 outcomes. The first outcome generally is go away, don't bother me again. The second outcome is you're too late, you should have contacted me 3 months ago. The third outcome is, okay, that's interesting, but contact me in 3 months. And the fourth outcome is, that's really interesting, can I buy? What the problem with that people have in terms of interruption marketing, cold calling, emails, advertising, is they only have one option, which is that I want to buy now. Whereas if you're actually using social, what you're doing is, because every piece of content that you create is there forever. So I have people contacting me about content I created 4 years ago. Yeah, we're here talking about my book, which I wrote in 2015, which is 4 years ago. And you're creating content that's available. You're being active on social, which people are seeing, so that every single day or every single week they're seeing that activity. And so, if you're providing interest and if you're providing insight and you're educating them, there's only one place that they're going to go to when they get around to actually saying, I want to buy. They're going to buy from you because you've educated them, you've given them the insight. And you'll find that goes on through the whole of the buying process. From the beginning, I'm interested in buying, right through to I need to build a deck to go to the board. It's £500,000 and we need to justify that. Can you help me with that? All the way through the process, providing insight, providing education, and you will get the business from the other people that aren't active and therefore not visible.
Yeah, I think in order to influence in the purchase moment, I think it's important. It's all about creating communities. At the end, a community means a lot of things, and a community means continuity on the communication. So you can use several channels to communicate and establish this relationship with the consumer. I think at the end, before we're talking about this one-to-one communication, I think we need to learn from the audience, for the consumer. I think a smart ecosystem and a smart community is that one that is able to learn from the people. I think that's what we are trying to do in Keenfolks, in trying to learn how is the behavior, how their interest evolving, because I think that's the way we can start adapting the communication, adapting the every single action that goes from a company, from a brand, that is connected with the real interest. I think this is more related with the understanding their daily interests. So all is about communities. I think, and now it's not it's like before, no? During the last 50 years, doing advertising, you are talking always about impacts, impressions, and this is something that from the past. Now we all agree that we are in another era where we want to communicate in another way. It's a more continuously way, having these communities where we can establish these conversations with all of them. We can do it in social media. I agree that we can use another channels like email marketing or whatever, because if you can personalize the content in all the different channels, all of them work. It's the way we approach and the way we use all of them. But the main objective is to connect and create this meaningful conversation, which is understanding their interests and adapting what we are sending to them in a way that we are helpful and meaningful for them.
What you'll find though with email marketing is that it's push, it's not permission. So what you're doing is constantly pushing. So if you take Gap, for example, my partner loves Gap jeans. She wants a relationship with Gap. She wants for them to love them back. But all they want to do is throw emails at her. All they want her to do is just to get her to sign up to an app that is going to send her notifications about what special offers they got. She's not interested. We actually have to pay more for Gap jeans because we don't sign up for those things. People aren't interested in being interrupted. You know, all of those days, you know, what this is about permission. Steph Godin wrote Permission Marketing 20 years ago this year. And it's actually finally this year is where people are realizing that what people want is relationships. I totally agree with you about community, but community for salespeople is very difficult to understand. It's a very fluffy thing that marketeers will, what we need is a community. But what we don't want is personalization. What we want is relevance. And what you'll find with personalization or personas is you go, right, white, male, 5'8", and that's like all four of us. And actually, we're all very different. Yeah, and therefore, this push to personas is not the right push. It means that you've got too many people. And what I want, is, for example, I'm staying at a hotel, and I haven't drunk alcohol for 9 years, and they sent me a bottle of champagne last night. Now, they think that's good customer experience. For me, it's a complete waste. And what they don't do is that they don't understand their clients. And I totally agree with you that what we need to do is actually listen to our clients and actually get to know them more. Now, they actually would need to get to know me quite well to know that I haven't drunk for 9 years. But actually sending a bottle of champagne actually isn't good customer experience.
I think that's a very key experience that you just described. If I step back as a consumer, which you also did right now, I personally, if we use the example of Gap, I interact on Twitter with it, I interact on Facebook with it, I go to the store, I probably look at Amazon, but everything is related to Gap for me. So it's like I have a one-to-one relationship actually to Gap, yeah. But what happens quite often then is I interact on Twitter with it, and I have a customer-related question, yeah, but they don't have any access to what I experienced with them before, which feels like, okay, do you really understand who I am? Exactly that kind of experience that you described.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you go into Guildford, and Guildford, the fact that people may not know what Guildford is important. So if you go to Guildford and go to Gap in Guildford and say, I want a particular boot cut pair of jeans, if you go to Twitter and have that conversation, they won't know what you're talking about. Because the people that they've empowered to have that conversation is usually, the Twitter is about resolving complaints rather than actually buying stuff. But actually, Gap as an organization, we want to love them, but they don't love us.
Yeah, I think that things are changing way too fast. And brands are not really realizing that. So while you had before studies and research in a starting point to define all the strategy, now this doesn't work anymore. You need to have a dynamic barometer of what is the consumer. So we are firmly believers of AI. AI can empower that. AI can understand what is the channel that you are and what is the level of personalization, and can really understand where you are 9 years ago and how you evolve, and that you are not drinking anymore. And this is amazing, because if you put out there the right technology, you can evolve with the consumer speed. We are firmly believers of that, and we think that the moments that we are living as a consumer evolve so fast that brands don't have this ecosystem and this connection. And for doing that, they need to understand this in a dynamic way. In a dynamic way where you can spot the different micro moments that consumers are and how they are acting in the different channels that you are. I mean, you mentioned Gap. I think that one of the things that are interesting is the moment that you feel like a brand. It's not about buying. In the moment that you say, I feel like Gap, that is really a game changing. And talking about ecosystem doesn't mean that you talk about different channels. We need to know where they are. And you mentioned 3. You just mentioned 3 where Gap is, no? You mentioned Amazon, you mentioned their own e-commerce, and you mentioned Twitter. But if consumers are in another channel, and if you can use it in a way to generate value to the consumer and to be there before, on Christmas, with things that is really meaningful, so that is a game changer. Because then you are not selling. They just purchase to you. And this is not anymore about push, as you said, Tim, and we are firmly believers of that. This is about pull, identifying, and experiencing.
Customer experience now is all about anticipating their needs, people needs. And now there's a huge opportunity, and as Miguel was mentioning, we have the opportunity to identify that needs. Typically in marketing, during the last years, we did the demographic and psychographic segmentation. But this is not enough. Probably Miguel and I, we have the same psycho and demo, and we are completely different in front of a purchase moment. And now it's all about understanding their mental, emotional anchor, their all the different aspects in terms of emotional behavior that affects in all the customer journey. And at the end, we are talking about experience, and experience, as we said, is anticipation. So now we can do it. And I'm a strong believer that we can communicate before, and we can do it in a meaningful way.
Yes, and that's also related to what you just said, that, I mean, even if I look back how I started this conversation, I talked about consumers, and then I talked about people, and then we have user experience. So we have all these kind of terms, how we interact with people, which is coming from marketing and all the technical developments. But in the end, that kind of tools also are relating to how do you treat people in the end. So that has to do with each other. And I strongly believe the times we are in, because it's about relationships, because it's about, do you deliver value? It's about people. And that's what companies really need to bring to life, to empower people.
Yeah, I think that there is an important understanding from the social media side. Yeah. That companies are still not there. Well, social media started by customer service in most of the companies, and started with a little budget. In 3 years, we came from 6% of the budget, 3, to 12% of the budget in terms of marketing. And that means that we cannot follow up this demand from a brand side if you don't understand what is social media about. So they are just, most of the brands, they still see it in an operative way. Yeah, so that's customer service. So they are not still in a social media brand care. And I think that changes all. When you understand that, care. Absolutely, and this changes all. Yeah, definitely.
I see it also because, I mean, in terms of social selling, that the companies are looking in terms of being presented on social, like you said, okay, part of customer service, it's also not the whole, yeah? It's a lot of branding, and then you have maybe a personal brand, the CEO, yeah? While on the other side, you have so many people in the organization who are on LinkedIn, who are on Twitter, who in their daily life something drives them, they have a passion related. But the companies are still seeing it very fragmented, right?
Yes. Social is currently treated very tactically. And it's very siloed in each of the different departments in marketing. It'll be in marketing, it'll be in sales, it'll be in human resources, it'll be in customer service. And what people need to do is start thinking about social as a strategic means of communication, both internally and externally.
Yeah, and I think a point where companies have kind of a fear is also when the people in the organization show themselves that they might say something which is against the company, that it's not consistent, and so on. But I believe they need to find a way, or how can they find a way? What's your suggestion?
Well, you know, there's a whole bunch of things that we have in organizations that we teach people about. We teach, you know, health and safety, sexual harassment, diversity, inclusion, and we explain to people about the importance of these things and how, if you're going to put up a ladder, you're going to put up a ladder in this format. Social media is just exactly the same as this. Everybody is on it, everybody is using it. And what we can't do is put our heads in the sand or try and control it. You know, there are banks in Europe that still don't allow access to Facebook through the corporate network because it's wasting time. And what we need to do is we need to trust our employees a little bit more. And what we need to do is give them the frameworks to allow them to talk in an authentic way. And also, one of the things that we need to do, obviously, with our employees is support them when they make mistakes. and don't necessarily fire them, but actually use that as a way of getting people to grow. But we have to allow people to talk on social, just as much as we have to allow people to put ladders up and things like that. And we need to teach them the right framework to do that.
I totally agree, and it's a bit like, because we were talking also about brands, yeah, where in the last 20, 40 years, everything had to be very perfect in the end. I think that's also has to do with the approach companies might have in mind in terms of social. Everything has to be 100% perfect. And exactly like you said, am I, as I'm part of this team, even allowed to go online, to be social? So these questions are sitting there in the back, while on the other side, if you're willing to make a transformation and show the individuality and what drives you on in the company, it's a huge opportunity.
The thing is that we're not looking for perfection. And I can guarantee you that pretty much every blog I write will have a typo in it. They will go out with typos in. But the thing is it shouldn't sit on my hard drive with me trying to find where that typo is, trying to make it more perfect and more perfect and more perfect. What we want to do is actually take that content that we create in the moment and actually put that out. And the worst thing that'll happen is that nobody will read it anyway.
So Tim, you mentioned in the end that when you want to build a relationship, it has a lot to do with the employees. It has a lot to do with people. While on the other side, there might be in the mindset of people in the organization, am I allowed to go online? Is there any rules that I break or something like that? Which advice can you give in the end to move forward, to empower people?
The most important thing is that there's leadership. People have to be given permission. They need to be empowered, but the most important thing is that the leaders lead, which is quite often a difficult thing. I was in a meeting recently with a couple of leaders of a business, and they were saying things. Yeah, it's on the list. Yeah, we're gonna get around to it. We're gonna do it. But they didn't do it, and we hear that a lot. But what you also find is that there's a lot of people in the organisation that actually expect the leaders to lead. They're actually waiting for this to happen. There's a lot of people that have read my book. There's a lot of people that understand about social and understand about social selling. And what they're looking for is a leaders to take that action. While we could argue that we're actually all leaders as an organisation and we can create a groundswell. But there has to be people coming from the top, and they have to actually be, I'm carrying a torch and you need to follow me. But we also need to be making sure that we're empowering the people and we're giving them the right advice about what's good and what's good behaviour and what's bad behaviour. Just like we would do with health and safety and diversity and inclusion and things like that. There's good things you do and there's bad things you do. And there's consequences. So those are things that organisations need to be looking for. Structure, but also clear leadership on it.
I totally agree, and it's in the end true leadership. I mean, you're also building the Keenfolks with a lot of leadership. You're choosing very wisely who's in there. You're taking care of them. You spend a lot of time in terms of what are people doing and why are they doing it. What makes sense for them. Yeah, and I think that's a very key factor in the end that you give. You're not talking about purpose. You're doing something related. And for me, it's also if you want to build relationship out there, you have to have relationship internally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, we are very careful in the hiring processes because we believe that it's not only about competences, it's about attitude and values. Mm. So we come from the identification of the values. No, we have three: challenge good enough to become great every day. We want to deliver incomparable value, both to our employees, to the brands that we serve, but also to the society. So we really encourage that, and we try to find purpose in every little thing that we do. And this is ingrained in the culture. It's not something that we just say. We ask these questions. When we are doing something, we ask this question, is this purposeful? What is the context? No? Are we really delivering the value that we want? Is this really multiplying per 10 what we're doing? Is this really making an impact? And we really train people to understand that. Because what we want to do here is to deliver the opportunity to the individual to be part of something that is much more than him and challenge himself. And yes, I think that the most important thing is really empower the individual. Align with the culture, but empower the individual. Yes, we firmly believe in that.
Nice. I think to wrap that up, that thought is, as we talk about the fragments in the end, I mean, you really have to come to a human understanding also internally. So not only with the customer, which we talked about, also internally, because also coming from the old marketing perspective, we talk so much about target groups, yeah, which the same, you talk about Generation Z sitting out there, but they're sitting in your office, and you're looking also to them like it's a target, yeah? So it starts really with, are you willing, all those nice tools that we have, you take it beside and no, I treat you as a human, right?
I think, sorry,
Yeah.
I think we still think that business and life are two different things.
Yeah.
And at the end are the same thing. Because we spend more than 40, 60 hours working. And then it goes together. I think business is an extension of your identity. That's why I think it's important to mentor the people, to empower the people, to be here, to help them to find the purpose, to do something that is, as Miguel was mentioning, bigger than something expected, no? But that's the key. Is goes together. And I think our responsibility is to help people to connect and find purpose in their life, because at the end it's connected with what they are doing in the daily activities, where design an email or a post or whatever, but it's all connected. So we need to, we have this responsibility about helping them, guiding them, and finding this purpose.
Perfect. Final question. We all know that related to what's happening in terms of expectations, transformations need to happen, yeah? And as we all agree, that's about people, that's about not just talking social, it's being social in the end. Which advice can we give to companies related to go that way, especially, I mean, there are brands who have been there for a long time, so they existed because of certain beliefs. You know, for them it's right going the opposite way.
My advice to people is to actually get some decent support on it. The great thing about social is it's very transparent. We had a client come to us and say, we had someone doing our social media and it didn't work out. I said, why is that? They said, well, we were quite surprised because he had a beard and therefore we thought he'd be quite good at social media. You know, the fact that just because someone's got a beard doesn't mean that they're good at social media. The thing is that there was a jeweler in the UK called Gerald Ratner, and he stood up at a conference one day and said that his products were crap. He had about 1,000 shops, and the whole of the company basically folded within a couple of weeks. Now, people didn't know that they were crap. But we have on social media transparency, which is that you can go online and you can check people out. So if you want to work with any organization, you can check them out and see if they're a good or bad organization. You can see whether they're actually saying and doing what they believe in. And I would recommend to any organization that looks for advice, whether it's marketing, sales, or whatever, is to check the people out online and see if they're actually living the dream.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is no really other way. I think that there is no option for brands to be or not to be in social media. Yes. There will be. There will be because...
The world has changed.
Yeah, the world is changing. So, or you adapt and you understand really where the line is going, or you're really not getting what consumers want to follow and the way to connect with them. Yeah, absolutely.
I quickly also would like to highlight not only the social part of it, also the transformation part of it, because we had this part about leadership in the end. I think this has to be highlighted a lot, to be fair, because like we also said, everyone thinks I've been doing social media for so long, I have the right people. Everyone thinks I've been doing customer experience. No worries, everything under control. But in the end, it really comes down to the individual people, and do they understand and do they live it? And that only comes from the leadership in the end. That's, I know you're spending a lot of time with people, you're spending a lot of time with people, I'm spending a lot of time with people, because it's like you need to translate it down.
Yes.
What does it actually mean? Because it's so complex and because you need them in the end. So I really would like to highlight the leadership in the end again.
Yeah, I think it's no different, from running any high-performance team. That what you need to do is provide them with the guidelines, and part of that is leadership. Yeah.
I think you can't achieve any goal without the team backing you up. I think this is more the best learning we had, and we have a great vision and an objective, but we can't achieve that without the people. That's why we spend 90% of our time with the people. And as I said before, it's not about business, it's about identity. It's about helping them. And of course, that's why the culture is so important, because the only way to scale business is through emotions, through culture.
Yeah. And you walk the talk.
Yes, and I think that's a good wrap up. But related to that, to give you some statistic that I read, I think on Harvard Business Manager, was that a CEO normally spends 5 to 10% maximum with people work, while everyone says of us, that's exactly where you need to invest right now, because otherwise you cannot empower people. So we really need to encourage to move forward from 10% to I don't know how much, but that's where the difference comes from. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you. Fantastic.